looks like we've got a few more folks joining, but we'll just go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone again to our OneLab Network event today. My name is Chelsea Parsons, and I'm a consultant with Guidehouse supporting CDC's OneLab initiative. Just a few notes to mention before we get started, before we dive in. If you're having any technical issues throughout the session today, feel free to email our OneLab inbox. It's onelab@cdc.gov, onelab@cdc.gov. You'll see that popping up in the chat, and you'll also see some more helpful links pop up in the chat throughout today, so you can keep an eye on that. If you have any questions throughout the session, and that is regarding the session contents, please use that Q&A function. You'll see that in the little ribbon down at the bottom of your Zoom webpage. You can use the Q&A to put questions throughout the session. We'll have a Q&A session at the very end of the presentation where we'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible, but please pop those into the Q&A. That way we can prioritize those questions to get them answered during our Q&A session. Please note also that we posted the link to the live captions in the chat. If you're going to use those live captions today, we just ask that you keep that live captions window open as well as this Zoom window so you can continue to have the presentation on one page and the live captions on another. So let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda for today. We're going to begin our session today by just briefly going through a few OneLab resources, and then we'll go in and introduce our main speaker for the session today. And then finally, we'll end the session, like I mentioned, with that Q&A, followed up by an announcement about some of our upcoming network events. Many of you have already discovered that we're going to keep the chat feature open for your engagement today. Thank you for introducing yourselves and welcoming each other. Just want to lay a couple ground rules for using the chat box today. So please keep in mind the appropriate rules of engagement you see on the screen. So again, use the chat to connect with others, react to what you're hearing, share your stories and experiences with each other, maybe even share best practices or questions you may have to your fellow peers and laboratory professionals. But if you have a question specifically for our presenter, so if you have a question that is specifically around this content for our presenter today, that's when we'll ask for you to use that Q&A function. So engaging with one another, reacting to what you're hearing, sharing stories, use the chat, engaging with our presenter to ask her questions. Please use the Q&A for that. And if you have any questions, you can let our team know. Please engage with respect and professionalism in that chat. Any inappropriate language, improper conduct, or any form of discrimination may result in removal from the webinar. And please ensure your comments are relevant to the topic. So if the moderator gives any direction regarding chat behavior, just please go ahead and comply with that accordingly. And again, if you have questions, you're free to shoot me a message on Zoom, or you can shoot an email to that inbox, onelab@cdc.gov. So I'm now going to turn it over to our OneLab Network lead, Ms. Alicia Branch, to share some of our new and relevant resources. Alicia?
Thanks, Chelsea. We're excited to announce the official launch of the Fundamentals of Public Health Laboratory e-learning course, developed from the September 9th, 2022 OneLab Network event, Public Health Laboratories 101. The course provides an overview of the 11 core functions of public health laboratories and explains how they are implemented to serve communities effectively. It also compares the similarities and differences between clinical and public health laboratories, focusing on their respective roles within the public health system. Next slide, please. As you can see from our background today, October is Biosafety and Biosecurity Month. The Division of Laboratory Systems is excited to celebrate and raise awareness of the importance of biosafety and biosecurity. As clinical and public health laboratories adapt to evolving public health challenges, strengthening biosafety and biosecurity practices through education, collaboration, and continuous improvement is critical. That's why the division has featured some initiatives, and they're aimed to raise awareness and foster a culture of safety and security, also promote the highest standards of biosafety and biosecurity practices, enhance the safety of our laboratory professionals, communities, and the environment, and support the critical work of laboratory and biosafety professionals. We encourage you to engage in the DLS biosafety initiatives, and a link to the initiatives has been provided in the chat. Next slide, please. I will now read two disclaimers. The first disclaimer I'll explain is that it's actually our external presenter disclaimer, and then the second disclaimer will be the professional acknowledgement for continued education, which is our PACE disclaimer. Then I'll introduce today's speaker. Slide decks may contain presentation material from panelists who are not affiliated with CDC. Presentation content from external panelists may not necessarily reflect CDC's official position on the topics covered. Next slide. CDC, our planners, and our presenters wish to disclose that we have no financial interests or other relationships with the manufacturers of commercial products, suppliers of commercial services, or commercial supporters. Next slide, please. And support of division's biosafety and biosecurity initiatives, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Imke Schroeder. Dr. Schroeder is the research project manager of the University of California Center for Laboratory Safety, where she is engaged in laboratory safety, accident analysis, and the development of research safety training. She frequently conducts safety climate surveys at academic institutions and is proficient in risk assessment associated with chemical and biological agents and processes, including BSL-3 best practices. She has served on various organizing committees, including the Laboratory Safety Workshop events since 2016 and the 2022 American Chemical Society Safety Summit. And since 2023, she has been the associate editor for the American Chemical Society's Chemical Health and Safety Journal. Our speaker for today is Dr. Imke Schroeder. Over to you, Dr. Schroeder.
Thank you so much. And let me share my screen. Okay, I think you should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Let me first give you an overview of what I will be talking about. I will begin by discussing artificial intelligence applications and their limitations. The majority of my time I will spend on giving you demonstrations of various AI applications, compare different visual and voiceover tools, and then finally summarize AI features of different presentation tools. So at the end of this presentation, you should be able to differentiate between machine learning, large language models, and generative AI, recognize hopefully the usefulness and also the limitations of AI applications, evaluate different AI tools for different work needs you might have, and then apply AI tools to create images and presentations. So I want to start out with a poll question. Are you using AI tools for your work? Are you using it currently? Do you use it frequently? So it looks like about a third of you, 29%, are using AI tools for their work, but the majority of you is not yet, or may not ever, who knows? All right. So first, let me give you a little bit of background. The first digital computers were built in the 1940s, and some of you may remember the early days of the internet in the 1990s, and you probably all remember the appearance of the first smartphone in 2007. And OpenAI launched ChatGPT almost 2 years to the date ago and started a new era of data process, data access, and manipulation. And here we are. Nobel Prizes were awarded in physics this year for the discovery in machine learning that paved the way for the AI boom, and also in chemistry for the application of AI for protein structure prediction and design of new proteins. Some call this time the artificial intelligence era, as it transforms our lives similarly to how the Industrial Revolution changed how we live. But potentially it has also negative impacts, especially if it's not regulated. So when we talk about AI, we generally use three terminologies or models. All three models have in common that they're being trained on data. Machine learning can be trained on very specific data sets, including pixels that are used in science, for example, to analyze images. Machine learning is used to predict 3D structures of proteins, toxicology outputs, or, for example, also the generation of synthetic DNA. Machine learning is really the foundation of large language models and generative AI. Large language models are trained on massive word data sets and use deep learning to interpret, manipulate, and generate human-type language. An example for a large language model is the GPT model, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. While machine learning makes predictions and large language models reuse existing content to perform specific tasks, generative AI creates new original content such as text, images, music, audio, and video. And if I have time at the end, I will play you a Halloween-themed biosafety song, which I created using an AI application. So, how much do you trust AI technology? Would you ever ride in a self-driving car? This is not a poll question, but just a question to yourself. And so I've been in one of those, and it was definitely weird. So in the following, I will demonstrate applications for chatbots. There are more chatbots than listed here, but I will mainly talk about the top 5 here. All of these chatbots operate slightly differently. ChatGPT and Claude and Copilot are really great for language content creation. I use Perplexity a lot as a research tool. Harpa is an interesting Chrome extension that gives me a deeper Google search experience, but note that you can now download pretty much all of these chatbots as Chrome extension if you use Chrome. All chatbots are free. However, you can also subscribe to them to gain access to their enhanced features and faster processing times. In contrast to other AIs, the free version of ChatGPT and Claude are not connected to the internet. And they have been pre-trained pretty much on data or information that's available on the internet up to 2021 for ChatGPT and 2022 for Claude. So that could pose some limitations on their usability. I want to mention here that ChatGPT now offers a Bing subscription called Browse with Bing, in which case it's connected to the internet. So before I go into it, and just disclaimer here, I am not promoting or advertising for any of these particular chatbots. And I'm not being paid by them either. So before I go into the demonstrations, I want to point to some of the limitations. Chatbots have significant security risks. when dealing with sensitive information. Any data documents you provide to a chatbot will be used for their training. There are also ethical considerations when data are mishandled or shared without consent or purposefully used to infringe on user privacy. There's no transparency on what data are collected by the companies that actually run the chatbots. If AI chatbots are trained on biased data or designed with biased algorithms, they can inadvertently propagate and reinforce these biases, including gender, racial, and cultural biases. So also, chatbots can generate false information, and this is especially problematic if the information is not where they receive their information from is not revealed. So it's very, very important. If you use any of this technology, check and edit the content that's created by them. So here's my second poll question. Does your institution currently have a policy for AI use? It seems that again, about a third of you, 35%, are at institutions that have a policy, but 65% of you are at an institution that does not have a policy, or you may also not be aware that your institution may have a policy. So there is lots of work that still needs to be done by institutions. So what should you do if your institution does not have a policy for AI use? So here's some recommendations that I would provide. Chatbots should not be used for applications involving sensitive or confidential information. This includes, for example, student records, medical records, research data, or any intellectual property that your institution or you may want not to be shared. They should not be used for anything of questionable ethical nature, such as generating academic content. They should not be used in admissions or hiring processes because of potential biases also. They should definitely not be used for counseling, where human empathy and judgment are required, because I just last week went to a talk by someone who was in the developing of early AI applications, and they just described it as an empty, emotionless box. Finally, do not use them for formulating confidential communication. However, there is a way to use AI tools for confidential data if your university or institution has a subscription service to it and a firewall. And I will describe this, how we are doing this at UCLA later in my talk. So here are some of the potential chatbot applications, but and I'm going to give you examples for most of them, but make sure if you use them to fact check and edit the content. So, all right, now I'm going to ask ChatGPT the question, how much energy is consumed by AI computing? This is ChatGPT. It states here at the very bottom in fine print, ChatGPT can make mistakes. Consider checking important information. The nice part of ChatGPT is that here on the site, it has created a library of what I've worked on with it in the past. And you can go back at any time and revisit what you've queried, and you can also ask it follow-up questions. But I now want to do a new search, so I'll go to new chat, paste in my question, and hit enter. And you can now observe how quickly ChatGPT generates the answer to my question. So this was ChatGPT, and I queried Claude with the same question, and it gave me a very succinct summary. The energy consumed of the energy consumption of AI servers could range from 85 to 134 terawatt hours annually by 2027, which is right around the corner, which compares to the electricity usage of an entire country like Argentina, Sweden, or the Netherlands. And so that does not even take into consideration the substantial amount of water used to cool the supercomputers. And in fact, the energy uses by AI data centers rivals that of Bitcoin mining. So AI tool usage has to become sustainable. Let's say you want to understand Einstein's theory of relativity. In this case, we will start out with a normal Google search and then add Harper to it. And Harper serves now as an assistant or co-pilot to your search. So here we go. I'm now going to do a Google search using Google Chrome. So I'm entering my prompt. And up come a bunch of websites, some videos, and more. So I'm now going to call up my Chrome extension Harper right here on the top. And Harper immediately picks up the prompt and provides me with a brief summary and even related queries that I can enter. But this is still too complex for me to understand. So I'm going to ask it to explain this to me. At the level of a 5th grader. And here you have a much simpler language that you can use to impress your office mates. All right. So you can also now use Harper to translate the text into any language. And in fact, any chatbot will do this for you. I cannot verify this text, but when I translated it into German, the translation was spot on. So note that in the translation, it retains its specialty characters. This is especially important if you want to translate text into any of the Asian languages. So the chatbots, pretty much all the chatbots can be used to improve language. So here's an example of an excerpt we received by a subject matter expert for electrical safety training. And so it reads, if your institution allows it and you have been trained, you may de-energize and isolate anything that is on fire and use a fire extinguisher of the C type, which is non-conductive. And when I saw this, I said, what? So I entered it into Claude. And Claude transformed it into something that's very succinct and informative without being given more background about the subject matter. So it really recognized that this had to do with an electric fire, and was just amazing in transforming the text for me. All right. So let me show you another example for using AI to create, we use it a lot for safety training. In this case, I'm using it to create a bloodborne pathogen training. So first I'm prompting the chatbot with, tell me about bloodborne pathogens as they relate to research safety. And then I will ask it to create a 20-minute course outline based on 2 PDFs that I'm attaching. So I'll go to the first prompt. Let's start there.
Here I am using Perplexity. I have entered my prompt, and within seconds, Perplexity provides me with the answer, which I can now review. What I like about Perplexity is that it provides me with the sources that it used to retrieve the information.
So now you can hear this is a different voice because when I was recording this, I had lost my voice. And so this is what you heard now is an AI voiceover. And I'll talk about AI voiceover towards the end of my talk again. So what I'm going to do now,
Here I am using...
I'm going to attach 2 PDFs. One of them is an OSHA bloodborne pathogen training. And the other one is, of course, the biosafety in microbial laboratories book, which is also available as a PDF. And this is a pretty big book or PDF.
Now I am going to use Perplexity to create an outline for a 20-minute interactive e-learning course on bloodborne pathogens for scientists in research labs. The more specific you make your query, the better response you can expect. I am attaching 2 documents. The documents should best be in PDF format. It is uploading now, which can take a few minutes since especially the BMBL file is large. And I hit enter. It now takes a moment to analyze the 2 documents. Perplexity now asks me follow-up questions to see where I am going. Since I want to make my training not too heavy on regulations, but want to emphasize understanding of the subject, I will leave out the OSHA standard. I can always include that in a later query. It now analyzes and comes up with an outline, which I can now rephrase, refine, and flush out.
So this is Perplexity, and PDFs can be added not to all chatbots, but Claude and Perplexity will accept PDF analysis. So I can now take the content, and so just the beginning of the course outline, and you can see it looks pretty reasonable. And so I can take now the content and ask Perplexity to flush it out. And so you see here more detail that I can now use to build my training. I can also use now, and I'm now using Claude to write multiple choice questions, and that's a huge time saver.
This is Claude. I am copying into the prompt my query and the fleshed out introduction from Perplexity, and then I hit enter. And Claude generates 3 questions, provides the answers and the feedback for the correct answer.
So also very, very reasonable test questions.
This is Claude.
And as I mentioned before, it's a huge time saver for these kind of applications. So you can not only use PDFs, you can also use videos as a source of information. And I just want to mention here, if you use PDFs, validated material, to create content that really helps to avoid misinformation that's potentially created by the chatbots. So I'm going to now use Perplexity to create a video outline for an electrical safety training. But you can also use the videos or PDFs to have them summarized and to create potentially fact sheets or other materials that you need. I'm now going to use Perplexity to create an outline for an electrical safety course from the 2-hour webinar by Jim Gilson. So I've entered my prompt and asked it to create an outline. And what I also like about Perplexity is that besides the original YouTube video, it provides me with additional resources that I might find interesting, and that backs up also the material. And what you see here is the answer. So here's the outline, introduction, understanding electricity, regulatory requirements, risk assessment, establishing an electrical safe work condition, PPE, safe work practices, and emergency response. So this is pretty impressive what it generates, and it gives me a very structured start to present to my subject matter experts for them to flesh out. All right, I now want to give you an example for using AI for sensitive data. UCLA now has a subscription service to Copilot by Microsoft, which we can access by logging into the university site. So it's behind a firewall. And so this slide was taken from UCLA's website to train users on the application. And it's important to note that Copilot encrypts data that are inputted and also deletes all data after the session is complete. So the data are not being used for training the chatbot. So I want to now show you how you can analyze data from an Excel file using a chatbot. And this could be a survey or could be sensitive incident data. And for this demonstration purpose, I'm using publicly available data that I downloaded as a CBS file from the internet. And it was pretty hard looking for Excel files on the internet with data in it. So I found data on refugee camps that were pretty depressing. So I settled on data from the World Happiness Report 2023. So I copied the data directly from the Excel sheet into and pasted them into the dialog query following my prompt to analyze the data. And it looks like this. And so then I asked Copilot to analyze the data. And so this is basically the output. It not only summarizes the first column, but also independently looks at the other columns in the data set. I performed, so you see here, GDP per capita, social support, healthy life expectancy, freedom of making choice, generosity and perception of corruption, and how that all correlates with happiness. And I performed the same analysis side by side with Perplexity. And Perplexity really comes up with a very similar analyses, very similar output, but has a slightly different take maybe. So for example, here it lists also again a strong correlation between GDP per capita and happiness. But it also notes that, however, some countries like Costa Rica, anybody from Costa Rica here or likes to travel there, achieves high happiness scores relative to low GDP per capita data, suggesting other factors that may play a role there. So it's amazing in these analyses that these chatbots do statistical correlations. So that's just an example. I now want to switch gears and talk about image creation. This is an image of UCLA's mascot that was created with Adobe Firefly. So we have the Bruin bear, and the Bruin bear is now in a lab coat with gloves and safety glasses. And so we like Adobe Firefly best as compared to Canva, DALL-E, or Midjourney. And I want to give a big shout out to Alicia, who created these images here. And she's the instructional designer for training development for our organization. So this is a comparison of Adobe Firefly images. So Adobe is a standalone web app, or it also works as part of Photoshop and other Adobe products. One could almost use the first image that you see here from 2023, except if you look closely, the hands are a little weird here, and maybe face are also a little weird. A little bit improvement over all the faces, but the lab code is open. The hands are still a little problematic here. Oh, the lab code is open, although we asked for the lab code to be closed. So it's still not quite there yet. This is an example by Canva. Canva in April 2023, pretty Halloweenish, I'd say. Didn't get the safety glasses correctly at all. Scary looking faces, almost like vampire maybe. Hands, oh well. Improvement in July 2024, but the hands, I don't know what's happening here, and I have no idea what happened with the hands here. All right. Okay, here's another very creepy example by Canva with a different prompt. I don't know how they came up with the hairnet here. good and the hands, very problematic. DALL-E, DALL-E, much better, but not photorealistic in 2023. If you now have Copilot for Windows, you can enter a description of the image you want to create into Copilot, and Copilot now uses DALL-E 3 to create images. So DALL-E 3, this is still DALL-E 2, and so DALL-E is improving as compared to the earlier versions here. But you see here the two white males. We were looking for a little bit more diversity and not entirely happy with the hands. Well, okay, Midjourney. Example, Midjourney 2023, very cartoonish, very sincere looking scientists, but big improvement in July. Also to be much more photorealistic. Midjourney is available for free, but it works very, very slowly. So in order to generate this image, we had to subscribe to it to get a faster processing speed. All right, image limitations. There's the problems with rendering hands, incorrect PPE, lab coat not closed, safety glasses problematic. Definitely look out for biases and also read the user rights carefully. Do you have to cite the image? Is the image that you create, is this actually yours to use? So look closely into that. Okay, AI voiceover. So I've talked about, used it earlier, and we are using 11 Labs. And you heard in some of the voiceovers earlier that there is some problematic language like he, we, Asha, that can be corrected. I'll give you a demonstration of that. Other developers are using Merv AI or Well Said, and they're all better, but we found 11 Labs works best for us and was the cheapest solution. So.
Hi, my name's Matilda, and I'm one of the voices available from 11 Labs. In this video, I'll show you the process of generating voiceover using 11 Labs. Before you begin, adjust the settings to select the voice that best matches your project's needs. You can change the voice settings to make the voice sound more variable or stable. You can also make it sound more clear and similar to the target voice. In this example, we'll leave the default settings. There are also different models of 11 Labs, depending on which languages you need narration in. For my voice, 11 Labs recommended using version 1 for the best quality. After adjusting the settings, simply paste in the text you need narrated. Note that 11 Labs only allows you to paste 2,500 characters at a time, so you may need to generate separate audio files for longer scripts. Select the Generate button to listen to the voiceover. While I'm generally accurate with most words, I sometimes struggle to pronounce technical terms correctly, and am sometimes inconsistent in how I pronounce the same word. For example, by default, I pronounce the word reagent as regent. The developer had to add a hyphen between re and agent to ensure proper pronunciation. When the narration is acceptable, select the download icon to download an MP3 file.
So you can use these voiceover tools also for different languages.
Hi.
And I now want to finish up my presentation with talking about building presentations. And want to give you an example for Slides AI, Tome, and at the end for PowerPoint. So this is an example for Slides AI, which is an extension of Google Slides, of the Google Slides app. The pros are that it creates decent placeholders for talking points, although the designs are quite simple, so not too much better of your as compared to your general PowerPoint. And the cons are that many images Slides AI suggested were really not relevant. So I'm not impressed by this very strange looking image that it suggested. And also the copyright of the image was unclear. This is an example by a slide created by Tome. Tome creates the text and the image after your prompt, but it takes more of a storytelling approach. Prose is many options, it provides you with many options to trim down the text and edit the text, and also change the tone. And you can give it a prompt and you can tell it you want to have a little bit different text or shortened text. The cons, the free version is only accessible via the web, and a paid account is required to download a PDF of your presentation. And so it cannot be downloaded as a PowerPoint file or a Google Slides. Does not have that type of export option. Also, many of the AI generated images by Tome uses DALL-E, and we not generally like those images. So this is a demonstration by Alicia on PowerPoint's AI, which is now available through the Microsoft subscription. And you may or may not have played with it. So note that Alicia made this video that I'm going to show you next accessible by adding caption at the bottom of the screen. And this is a feature also available by PowerPoint.
In this video, we'll explore how to use PowerPoint's AI tools to both build and improve your presentations. So in this example, I have a Microsoft 365 subscription and I am logged into Microsoft365.com. I've selected the PowerPoint app and I've entered some simple text, and I will now select the designer option from the Home tab over here, the designer option to get some suggestions about slide design layouts. So as you can see, it's come up with some options here. You can scroll down, and if you want, you can see more design ideas by clicking on that. But I actually like this option here. So I'm going to wait for that to load. All right. And then if I wanted to, I could make this a little bigger to adjust to the slide dimension size there. All right, now that I'm happy with how this slide looks, I can move on to the second slide, and then Designer will give me other options for this slide. So I can scroll down, I can see more design ideas there, and we'll just go with this one for now. But I do have this empty area, and I would like to fill it with a photo. And so for that, I can go up here to the image options, select that, and do want to be careful about copyright. So right here, it's selected Creative Commons only. And I can scroll through, I can see it's suggesting some images relating to tools, other things relating to software. I can scroll through this until I find something that I like. We'll just add this image as an example here. So once I'm happy with the overall design of the PowerPoint, I can move on to practicing the presentation by going up to the Slideshow tab and then selecting the Rehearse with Coach option. And if you select this arrow here, you can also choose to get feedback on your body language as well as certain settings, which we'll go over in a little bit. Once I select the Rehearse with Coach option, you can see that there's this pop-up here, and I will select the Start Rehearsing button. I can also get real-time feedback. So for this example, we'll start with the presentation, and we'll pretend that this is a longer presentation. It does mention that it will give you better feedback if you do practice for a longer session, But for now, this will be good enough to give you a snapshot of the type of results you can get. We'll pause this session and then we will close out the slideshow. And you can see this rehearsal report of the time spent, the slides rehearsed, which was just the one here, and then whether we use any filler words such as or ah, whether we repeat the same language that is on the slide, or if we add some original words with our presentation. Inclusiveness, whether you use inclusive language. And then you can also get feedback on the speed of your presentation. So how fast you talk, and then how fast you talk over time. And if you want to rehearse again, you can select that button to get more recommendations. So those are just a few of the examples of tools within PowerPoint AI that can be useful for you as you get ready for your next presentation.
Of course, Alicia is the absolute presentation nerd. If you want to become a presentation nerd, you can try this presentation tool by PowerPoint. So let me summarize my talk. You can use chatbots to increase your knowledge, create content, summarize existing content, translate content into different languages. You can play around with different chatbots. There are more than just one, more than just ChatGPT, but be aware of their limitations and definitely verify the content. Lab-related AI images still need improvements. AI voiceovers are relatively user-friendly, although some people still prefer the human voice over the AI voice. And presentation AIs can save you time and can make the presentation more interesting. And so thank you to all of you. I now will give you a little thank you AI biosafety song. Are you ready? Okay, let's go.
Ebola in a test tube, glowing neon green. Salmonella creeping like it's Halloween. Rats with tiny lab coats running wild at night. CRISPR-Cas is casting spells with genetic light. In the lab of horrors, we mix terror into science. Biosafety rules are fighting off defiance. Masks and gloves are ghostly armor gleam. In this haunted lab we dance in a nightmare dream. Petri dishes whisper secrets of disease. Microscopes reveal the monsters in the east. Pathogens are partying under black light glow. In the lab of horrors where the wicked vials flow. In the lab of horrors we mix terror into science. Biosafety rules are fighting off defiance. Masks and gloves are ghostly armor gleam.
So I'm apologizing for ending the song, but I wanted to leave some time for questions because we're running already late here. And if you wanted to have the song, I'm super, super happy to send it to you. So I'm happy to share it. So with that, I'll open up the
Okay, we'll
floor
take
for
a few minutes
questions.
to answer some questions. If we don't answer your question today, we'll do our best to answer via email. If you have any questions after today, you can email us at onelab@cdc.gov. Let's see. Let's take a couple of these. This is a good one. How do you envision AI being used by the average clinical hospital laboratory? It seems like the hospital workers will be the one generating data for the AI to use versus using AI in their everyday work.
Yes, and that's a very good question. And if you have data analysis by AI is amazing. And again, I would recommend a subscription service. I would definitely check out different AI options. I know one university subscribed to ChatGPT Data Analyst. So there are some even specialty AI applications that you might want to explore. But even sending out routine emails that you might want to use, you can summarize certain policies that you have or certain emails that should be, you want to have maybe an email that has an encouraging tone. You can have that generated by AI. So, yeah.
And we'll take one last question. Do you know if there is a course that provides some training? Because I think that, you presented a lot of great information. I'm sure, a lot of the participants will need like some additional training. So do you know if the platforms offer the training, or of course, maybe YouTube?
No, that's a very interesting question. And I think I would be very open in helping to develop such a course or giving maybe even live online hands-on exercises. So one could envision potentially having a workshop on training people on how to use AI. So I think that might be a very good possibility. Moving forward, I'm very much advocating for a regulation of AI use to work together with the institution and really home in on what are employees allowed to use in their AI applications. And there is, I mean, unfortunately, the regulation AI is not regulated currently in the United States. There's more and more coming out. It is regulated in the EU. That's another talk on AI regulation. But I just really want to emphasize that currently the institutions themselves have to take responsibility. And just like with any other technology, users like you and I, we have to be accountable and responsible for the use of any type of technology, including AI.
All right, great. So that's all the time we have questions for. But what we can do is send you the remaining questions, and then we can have you answer them, and then we can email them back to the participants.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'd like to say thank you again for the excellent, insightful presentation.
Thank you all. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we hope to have you back to maybe do one of those trainings. We're offering one PACE credit for today's webinar. The PACE certificate are immediately available on the OneLab Reach in your My Learner Hub for easy access. You'll receive your PACE credit after participating in today's session by logging into your OneLab Reach account. Visit the link in the chat and use the passcode to complete the evaluation within 2 weeks. You must be logged into your OneLab Reach account to access the evaluation. You will also receive an email containing these instructions if you miss the link and the passcode after today's presentation. So before we close out, I want to highlight some upcoming OneLab events. The first event is OneLab Test, scheduled on October 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Patient testing is essential. Get the right results. This two-part series and final presentation will focus on the test phase of Ready, Set, Test. It aims to provide insight and best practice for patient testing. Please register using the link in the chat. And also, I would say consider viewing the video and slides from the first session and the past events on passing this section on the OneLab test webpage. Next slide, please. And our final OneLab network event for 2024, titled Something is Strange, Let's Notify the LRN, will occur on November the 19th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This webinar is a panel discussion with experts Erin Bowles, who is the Wisconsin Clinical Laboratory Network Outreach Coordinator, Shula Escott, who is a biosafety, biosecurity, and bioterrorism preparedness trainer, and Chris Mangle, who is Director of Public Health Preparedness and Response at the Association of Public Health Laboratories, or better known as APHL. They will present a clinical laboratory response example, new tools, and valuable resources. The link is posted in the chat. Next slide. And as a reminder, the slides and audio recording of this event will be posted to our website within 2 weeks of today. And in conclusion, we encourage you to utilize the OneLab inbox to share your training needs and feedback on OneLab with us. We use your input to select event topics and better understand your laboratory training needs. The OneLab email address is posted in the chat for easy access. And again, we thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.